The bullet missed Wyatt Kincaid's heart by 3 inches, but the woman standing in the doorway of the saloon with smoke curling from her pistol hit it dead center. Blood soaked through his shirt as he stumbled backward against the hitching post, his own revolver clattering to the dusty street of Wilson, Kansas. The summer heat of 1882 shimmered off the packed earth, and through the haze of pain, Wyatt watched the most beautiful woman he had ever seen lower her weapon with hands that did not shake. She wore a dress the color of midnight, her honey-colored hair pulled back severe from a face that could have launched 1,000 cattle drives. Her eyes, green as new prairie grass, met his without apology or fear. "You had no right to kill him," she said, her voice carrying clear across the sudden silence that had fallen over Main Street. "Johnny Bledsoe was my business, not yours." Wyatt pressed his hand against the wound in his shoulder, feeling the hot pulse of blood between his fingers. Johnny Bledsoe was wanted for murder in 3 territories. That made him everybody's business, miss. He was my husband. The word hung in the air like gun smoke. Wyatt felt Doc Harrison's hands on him, pulling him toward the physician's office, but he could not take his eyes off the woman. She stood perfectly still, the pistol now hanging loose at her side, and something in her expression struck him harder than any bullet could. It was not grief exactly, nor was it relief. It was something complex and wounded that made his chest ache worse than the hole she had put in him. "Somebody better get the sheriff," Doc Harrison muttered, half dragging Wyatt up the wooden steps. "That woman just shot a man in broad daylight." But Sheriff Coleman was already there, moving past them toward the woman with his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Now, Helena, let us just talk about this calm and sensible." Helena. Her name was Helena. Wyatt let Doc Harrison guide him inside, but he turned his head to watch through the window as Sheriff Coleman gently took the pistol from her hand. She let him, her shoulders slumping suddenly as if all the strength had gone out of her at once. Other women rushed forward, circling her, and the crowd began to break apart, men returning to their business with the peculiar efficiency of those who had seen violence before and would see it again. "You are lucky," Doc Harrison said, laying Wyatt out on the examination table with less gentleness than strictly necessary. "Another few inches and we would be measuring you for a pine box. Tell me about her." The words came out before Wyatt could stop them. Doc Harrison paused in the act of cutting away his shirt, his weathered face creasing with disapproval. "You want to know about the woman who just shot you?" "Yes," the doctor sighed, pouring whiskey over the wound with no warning. Wyatt gritted his teeth against the fire that lanced through his shoulder. "Helena Thompson. Came to Wilson about 2 years ago with Johnny Bledsoe. He claimed they were married, though I never saw any proof of it. He was a gambler and not a good one. Mean when he drank, which was most days. She worked at the dress shop, kept to herself mostly." "Why did not anyone help her?" Wyatt managed to ask as Doc Harrison began probing for the bullet. "Same reason nobody helps most women in her situation. It was not our business, and Johnny had a reputation with that gun of his." Doc Harrison glanced at him, something sharp in his old eyes. "Until you made it your business this morning." Wyatt remembered the scene outside the saloon, Johnny Bledsoe roughing up a Mexican boy who could not have been more than 12, demanding money the kid clearly did not have. Wyatt had intervened because it was the right thing to do. When Johnny went for his gun, Wyatt had been faster. He had killed men before when he rode with the Texas Rangers. It never got easier, but it had been a clean shoot, self-defense. He had not expected the dead man's wife to put a bullet in him for it. "Got it," Doc Harrison said, holding up the flattened piece of lead with his forceps. "You will live, though you will be sore for a good while. That shoulder is going to need time to heal proper." Through the window, Wyatt could see Sheriff Coleman escorting Helena down the street toward the jailhouse. She walked with her head high, but there was something broken in the set of her shoulders that made his chest constrict. "Will they hang her?" he asked quietly. Doc Harrison began stitching the wound closed, his movements practiced and sure. "Doubt it. Half the town saw what happened, and the other half heard about it within 5 minutes. You killed Johnny in a fair fight, and she shot you for it. You are alive, and even if you were not, I expect there is not a jury in Kansas that would convict a woman for avenging her husband, even a sorry specimen like Johnny Bledsoe. I do not want to press charges." The doctor's hand stilled. "You sure about that? Woman put a bullet in you." "I am sure." Doc Harrison finished the stitching in silence, then bandaged Wyatt's shoulder with practiced efficiency. "There are men coming into town already warning about her, saying she is trouble. Saying any man who gets close to Helena Thompson is asking to get his heart broken at minimum, his life destroyed at worst. They say she is cursed, that she brings death wherever she goes." Wyatt sat up slowly, testing the limits of the injury. The pain was substantial but manageable. "What do you say?" "I say she is a woman who has had a hard life and deserves better than she got." Doc Harrison washed his hands in the basin, not looking at Wyatt. "I also say you should stay away from her. You are a good man, Wyatt Kincaid. One of the few real decent ones I have met in my years out here. That woman has been through hell. She does not need another man complicating her life, even with the best of intentions." But Wyatt was already thinking about those green eyes, about the way she had stood in that doorway with the gun in her hand and no apology in her bearing. He was thinking about the brokenness he had seen beneath her defiance, and something in his chest pulled tight and insistent. 3 days later, Sheriff Coleman released Helena from the jail with no charges filed. Wyatt heard about it from Mrs. Peterson at the general store, where he had gone to buy supplies for the small ranch he was attempting to build outside of town. Mrs. Peterson was a gossip of the first order, but she was also kind-hearted, and her concern for Helena seemed genuine. "Poor thing has nowhere to go," Mrs. Peterson said, wrapping his purchases in brown paper. "The dress shop let her go, afraid of the scandal. She has been staying at the boarding house, but Mrs. Crawford says she cannot keep her if she cannot pay the rent." Wyatt counted out coins for his purchases, aware of the way Mrs. Peterson was watching him with bright, curious eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you are the reason she lost everything," Mrs. Peterson said bluntly. "And because I think you are fool enough to try to help her, which means you should know what you are getting into." He should have left it alone. He should have collected his supplies and ridden back to his ranch, and focused on building the life he had come to Kansas to build. He was 26 years old, had spent too many years drifting from one town to another, working as a lawman or a ranch hand or whatever was needed. He had saved enough money to buy land, to put down roots, to maybe find a good woman and start a family. The last thing he needed was to involve himself with a woman whose husband he had killed, a woman who had already shot him once. But that evening found him standing outside the boarding house with his hat in his hands, his shoulder throbbing beneath his shirt, waiting for Helena Thompson to answer his knock. She opened the door, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. She was even more beautiful up close, though there were shadows under her eyes that had not been there before, and her face was thinner, more drawn. She wore a simple gray dress that had been mended in several places, and her honey-colored hair was braided over one shoulder. "Mr. Kincaid," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "I was told you declined to press charges. I came by the doctor's office to thank you, but you were already gone. How is your shoulder? It will heal." He turned his hat in his hands, suddenly uncertain. "I wanted to talk to you if you have a moment. Something flickered across her face, too quick to identify. "If you are here to tell me I should leave town, you are not the first. I have heard it from plenty of others already. That is not why I am here." He took a breath, committing to the leap. "I heard you lost your position at the dress shop. I have a ranch outside of town, about 5 miles west. It is not much yet, just a house and a barn and enough land for cattle when I can afford to stock it properly. I need someone to help with the cooking and the cleaning, maybe tend a garden. The work would not be easy, but it comes with room and board and fair wages." She stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "You want to hire me? After I shot you. You were grieving. People do things when they are grieving that they might not do otherwise. I was not grieving." The words came out flat and hard. "I was angry. I am still angry." "Then you were angry. Point stands." Helena wrapped her arms around herself, and in the fading light he could see the exhaustion etched into every line of her body. "Why would you do this? You do not know anything about me. I know you are in a difficult situation through no fault of your own. I know you need work and I need help. Seems like a fair arrangement to me. People will talk. People always talk. I stopped caring what they said a long time ago." She bit her lower lip, and he saw the war playing out behind her eyes, pride against necessity, suspicion against desperate hope. Finally, she said, "I need to think about it." "Take all the time you need. Offer stands." He settled his hat back on his head, nodding to her. "Good evening, Miss Thompson." "Mrs. Bledsoe," she corrected, and there was something bitter in her voice. "Legally, I am still Mrs. Bledsoe." "Not if you do not want to be," Wyatt said quietly. "Name is just a word. You can choose your own." He left her standing in the doorway, and he did not look back, though he could feel her eyes on him all the way down the street. She came to the ranch 3 days later, arriving in a wagon driven by Doc Harrison. Wyatt was in the barn, mucking out the stalls, when he heard the sound of wheels on the packed earth of his drive. He emerged into the sunlight to find Helena climbing down from the wagon seat with a single worn carpetbag in her hands. "Doc," Wyatt said, nodding to the older man. "Wyatt. I am just the transportation. Miss Thompson here asked me to bring her out, and I figured it was the least I could do." Doc Harrison's expression was carefully neutral, but there was a warning in his eyes. "You take care now, both of you." They watched him drive away, and then they were alone in the vast silence of the prairie, with nothing but the wind and the distant cry of a hawk overhead. "I will show you the house," Wyatt said. It was small, just 3 rooms. A main living area with a kitchen, a bedroom, and a small storage room that could serve as a second bedroom once he cleared out the supplies. He had built it himself over the past year, working whenever he had time between odd jobs in town. It was solid and well made, but spare. The furniture was basic, the walls were bare, and there was a general sense of impermanence about the place, as if he had been camping here rather than truly living. Helena set her carpetbag down and looked around with an assessing eye. "Where do you sleep?" "Bedroom. I will move my things into the storage room. You should have the proper bedroom." "That is not necessary." "It is." They looked at each other across the small space, and Wyatt was aware suddenly of how tall she was, how the top of her head came nearly to his shoulder. Most women he knew were smaller, more delicate. Helena Thompson had a strength to her that went beyond the physical, something in the way she held herself that spoke of battles fought and survived. "I will not be your mistress," she said abruptly, her chin coming up. "If that is what you are expecting in exchange for this job, you can take me back to town right now." Heat flooded his face. "That is not what this is. I would never. I am not that kind of man, Miss Thompson." "Mrs. Bledsoe." "Helena." Her eyes narrowed. "You do not have the right to use my Christian name." "Maybe not. But I am going to anyway, because I am not calling you by his name when he does not deserve to have his name anywhere near you." Something shifted in her expression, a crack appearing in the careful armor she wore. For just a moment he saw the vulnerability underneath, raw and bleeding, before she shuddered it away again. "Fine," she said. "Helena, and I will call you Wyatt because formality seems foolish under the circumstances." "Under what circumstances?" "Under the circumstances where I shot you and you hired me anyway. Under the circumstances where you are giving me your bedroom and moving into a storage closet. Under the circumstances where you are either the kindest man I have ever met or the biggest fool." "Probably both," Wyatt admitted, and was rewarded with the ghost of a smile. They fell into a routine over the following weeks. Helena proved to be an excellent cook, far better than Wyatt, who had been living mostly on beans and hardtack. She also had a way with the small vegetable garden he had started, coaxing life from the stubborn Kansas soil with a patience he lacked. She cleaned the house until it shone, mended his clothes, and generally transformed his rough bachelor existence into something that resembled a home. For his part, Wyatt worked the land, repaired the barn, built a chicken coop, and did everything he could to make the ranch a viable operation. He went into town once a week for supplies, always coming back with something extra: fabric for new curtains, seeds for the garden, a rocking chair he found at the general store that he thought she might like. They danced around each other carefully, two people carrying wounds too deep to easily heal. But slowly, in small increments, they began to talk. It started one evening after supper when Wyatt was sitting on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Helena brought him coffee and, after a moment's hesitation, sat down in the rocking chair beside him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "Why did you really hire me? And do not tell me it is just because you needed help around the house. You managed fine before I got here." Wyatt sipped his coffee, considering his words. "You want the truth? I would appreciate it. When you shot me, I saw something in your eyes, something broken. And I thought, here is a woman who has been hurt bad and maybe nobody has ever tried to help her. Maybe if someone did, if someone showed her that not all men are like Johnny Bledsoe, then maybe that broken thing could start to heal." She was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped around her own coffee cup. "You are a fool. I have been told that. Johnny used to say he was helping me too when we first met. He said he saw something special in me, something worth saving, and for a while I believed him. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late. I was already trapped. How did you meet him?" Helena stared out at the darkening prairie, her profile sharp against the dying light. "I was working as a seamstress in Abilene. My parents died when I was young, and I had been on my own for a while, doing whatever work I could find. Johnny came into the shop one day, all charm and smooth words. He courted me properly, or what I thought was proper. Flowers, compliments, promises of a better life. We were married within a month. And then he showed me who he really was. The drinking, the gambling, the cruelty." She took a shaky breath. "I tried to leave him twice. Both times he found me. The second time he broke my arm and promised that if I tried again he would kill me. I believed him." Wyatt felt rage building in his chest, hot and fierce. "I am glad I killed him. So am I." She turned to look at him, and in the last light of day her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "That is a terrible thing to say about the man I married, but it is true. When you shot him, I felt relief. And then I felt guilty for feeling relieved. And then I was so angry because you took away my choice. I had been planning to kill him myself." The words hung in the air between them, stark and honest. "I have a gun hidden in my room," she continued, her voice steady now. "I bought it 6 months ago from a traveling salesman. I had been waiting for the right moment, when I could make it look like an accident or self-defense. And then you came along and did it for me, and I was so furious I could not see straight. That is why I shot you, not because I love Johnny. Because you robbed me of the satisfaction of doing it myself. Wyatt absorbed this, understanding dawning. You wanted your freedom on your own terms. Yes, I am sorry. If I had known, you could not have known. And in the end, the result is the same. He is dead and I am free. She wiped at her eyes impatiently. But do not mistake me for some damsel who needs rescuing, Wyatt Kincaid. I am not broken. I am angry and I am tired and I am trying to figure out who I am without someone hurting me. That is not the same thing. No, he agreed. It is not. They sat together in the darkness, and something had shifted between them, some barrier coming down. It was not trust, not yet. But it was the beginning of honesty, which was even more valuable. The warnings came from every direction. When Wyatt went into town the following week, no fewer than 5 men pulled him aside to tell him he was making a mistake. Thomas Garrett, who owned the feed store, cornered him by the grain sacks. That Thompson woman is trouble, Wyatt. She has already cost you a bullet wound. You keep her around, she will cost you more. Maybe your reputation, maybe your life. Mark my words. Samuel North, another rancher, was more direct. She will break your heart, son. Woman like that, with her history, she cannot help it. It is in her nature now. She will use you up and throw you away, and you will be left with nothing but regrets. Even Sheriff Coleman took him aside, his weathered face creased with concern. I know you are trying to do right by her, Wyatt, and I respect that, but be careful. Helena Thompson has been through things that change a person. She is not the marrying kind anymore if she ever was. You give her your heart, she is liable to crush it without even meaning to. Wyatt listened to them all, thanked them for their concern, and promptly ignored every word. The truth was, he was already halfway in love with her, and he had been since the moment he saw her standing in that saloon doorway with smoke curling from her gun. There was something about Helena that called to him in a way nothing else ever had. Maybe it was her strength. Maybe it was her honesty. Maybe it was the way she refused to play the victim, even when she had every right to. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe he just recognized in her a kindred spirit, someone who had been knocked down by life and had gotten back up anyway, bloodied but unbroken. He thought about what Sheriff Coleman had said about Helena breaking his heart. And he thought about his response, the words forming clear and certain in his mind. Then she can have every piece. If loving Helena Thompson meant risking pain, so be it. He had survived worse. And the possibility of her love in return was worth any amount of risk. Summer deepened into August, and the Kansas heat became oppressive. They worked in the early mornings and late evenings, resting during the worst of the afternoon sun. Wyatt taught Helena how to ride, putting her on his gentlest horse and walking beside her until she found her balance. She was a quick learner, and within a week, she was cantering across the prairie with her braid flying behind her, laughing with a freedom he had never heard from her before. That laugh did something to him, reached inside his chest and squeezed until he could hardly breathe. He wanted to hear it again and again, wanted to be the reason for it. One evening, they were sitting by the creek that ran along the edge of his property, their feet dangling in the cool water. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber, and the crickets were beginning their nightly chorus. "Tell me about your family," Helena said, skipping a stone across the water's surface. "Not much to tell. My father was a soldier, died in the war when I was 8. My mother tried to keep us together, but times were hard. She died of fever when I was 14. After that, I worked wherever I could find it. Ended up joining the Texas Rangers when I was 19, spent 5 years with them before I decided I wanted something different." What made you choose Kansas? The land was affordable, and I liked the idea of building something from nothing, starting fresh. He glanced at her. What about you? Any family besides your parents, a brother, Michael? He is 2 years older than me. We have not spoken in years. He blamed me for marrying Johnny, said I made my bed and should lie in it. When I wrote to him asking for help, he never replied. The pain in her voice was evident, and Wyatt felt that familiar surge of protective anger. His loss. Maybe, or maybe he was right. Maybe I did bring it all on myself. Do not say that. You were young and alone and someone took advantage of that. That is not your fault. She turned to look at him, water drops glistening on her bare feet. You really believe that, do not you? You actually think I am worth defending. I know you are. Something passed between them, electric and undeniable. Wyatt felt it arc across the space separating them, saw Helena's eyes widen as she felt it too. For a moment, he thought she might lean toward him, might close the distance, and she stood abruptly, grabbing her shoes. We should get back. It will be dark soon. He let her go, but the moment stayed with him, replaying in his mind long after they had returned to the house and retreated to their separate rooms. The kiss happened 3 weeks later, and it was not planned or orchestrated or romantic in any traditional sense. They had gone into town together for supplies, and Wyatt had left Helena at the general store while he went to the bank. When he returned, he found her backed against the store's wall by a man he recognized as Frank Dawson, a ranch hand with a reputation for drinking and brawling. "Come on, sweetheart," Frank was saying, his hand braced against the wall beside her head. "Everyone knows what you are. No point playing coy now. How much for an hour of your time?" Wyatt saw red. He crossed the boardwalk in 3 strides and grabbed Frank by the shoulder, spinning him around. His fist connected with Frank's jaw before the other man could react, sending him sprawling into the dust. "Stay down," Wyatt said, his voice low and dangerous. "You ever come near her again, you will answer to me." Frank wiped blood from his mouth, his eyes going between Wyatt and Helena. "You are welcome to her, Kincaid. Used goods anyway." Wyatt started forward, but Helena's hand on his arm stopped him. "He is not worth it. Let us go." They loaded the supplies into the wagon in tense silence, and Wyatt drove them out of town with his jaw clenched so tight it ached. His shoulder was throbbing where he had stressed the still-healing wound, but he barely noticed through the fury. It was not until they were halfway home that Helena spoke. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did. I have dealt with men like Frank Dawson before. I can handle myself." "I know you can. I still was not going to stand there and let him talk to you that way." She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Thank you." They reached the ranch, and Wyatt pulled the wagon up beside the house. He started to climb down, but Helena caught his sleeve. "Wyatt, wait." He turned, and suddenly she was there, her hands on his face, pulling him down to her. Her lips met his, and the world stopped. She tasted like sunshine and something sweet, and when her fingers threaded into his hair, he made a sound low in his throat that might have been her name. The kiss deepened, became something hungry and desperate, months of tension and denial pouring out in a single moment. Wyatt's hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and she came willingly, pressing against him until there was no space between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Helena's eyes were wide and her lips were kiss-swollen. "I should not have done that. I am glad you did. The people in town, they already think the worst of us. If they knew, I do not care what they think, you should. This could ruin you, Helena." He cupped her face in his hands, making her look at him. "I do not care. Do you understand me? I do not care what anyone thinks or says. I only care about you." Tears spilled over, tracking down her cheeks. Why do you care about me? I am nothing. I am the wife of a criminal, a woman with a ruined reputation, someone who shot you. You are everything," he said fiercely. "You are strong and brave and honest. You are beautiful and sharp and funny. You are a survivor. And he took a breath, committing to the words, I love you. I have loved you since the day you shot me, maybe even before that. And I know you are not ready to hear it, and I know you might never feel the same way, but I needed you to know." She stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "They warned you, did not they? All those men in town. They told you I would break your heart. They did. And you do not care. Then you can have every piece," he said simply. "If loving you means risking my heart, then take it. It is yours anyway, has been for a while now." She laughed through her tears, a broken, beautiful sound. "You really are a fool, Wyatt Kincaid. Does that mean you might love me too?" I do not know if I remember how." She pressed her forehead to his, her hands still tangled in his hair. "But I want to try. God help me, I want to try." He kissed her again, slower this time, tender and full of promise. And when they finally climbed down from the wagon and went inside, hand in hand, something had fundamentally changed between them. The walls were down. The pretense was gone. What remained was raw and real and terrifying in its intensity. That night, Helena moved her things from the bedroom into the storage room with Wyatt, and they lay together in the narrow bed, fully clothed, just holding each other. She fit against him perfectly, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped around her. "Tell me about the nightmares," he said quietly, feeling her tense. "You have them most nights, I hear you through the wall." She was silent for so long he thought she might not answer. Then, "I dream that he is still alive, that he found me, that he is hurting me and I cannot stop him, cannot get away. Sometimes I dream that I killed him and got caught and they are hanging me. Sometimes I dream that I am back in that house in Wilson and I will never escape. You are safe now. I promise you, you are safe. I know. In my head, I know that. But my dreams do not seem to have gotten the message." He tightened his arms around her, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Then I will just have to remind you every night when you wake up. I will be right here and you will be safe and he is gone forever." She tilted her head back to look at him, and in the darkness, he could just make out the shine of her eyes. "I do not deserve you. You deserve everything good this world has to offer, and I intend to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." She kissed him then, soft and sweet, and they fell asleep tangled together, two broken people trying to heal. The autumn came, painting the prairie in shades of gold and rust. Wyatt used the last of his savings to buy a small herd of cattle, and Helena proved surprisingly adept at helping him manage them. They worked side by side from dawn until dusk, building their ranch, building their life. The town still talked, but the nature of the gossip began to shift. At first it was scandalous, the cowboy and the widow living in sin. But as the weeks turned into months and it became clear that their relationship was genuine, that they were building something real together, the disapproval began to soften into something closer to acceptance. Mrs. Peterson was the first to come around, showing up at the ranch one afternoon with a basket of preserves and a knowing smile. "I suppose congratulations are in order," she said, looking between Wyatt and Helena with obvious approval. "It is about time someone made an honest woman of you, Helena." Helena, who had tensed at the first sound of the wagon, relaxed slightly. "We are not married, Mrs. Peterson." "Well, why not? It is clear as day you are in love. Might as well make it official." After she left, Helena turned to Wyatt with a complicated expression. "Is that what you want?" "Marriage, eventually, when you are ready." He pulled her close, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I am in no rush. We have time." But time, as it turned out, was not as plentiful as they thought. It was late October when the stranger rode into town asking questions about Helena. Sheriff Coleman came out to the ranch to warn them, his face grim. Man says he is Helena's brother, Michael Thompson. He is at the hotel, says he needs to talk to her. Thought you should know before he comes out here. Helena went white. Michael is here. Says he got word that Johnny was dead and he wanted to make sure you were all right. Seems genuine enough, but I figured you would want to decide whether to see him or not. She looked at Wyatt, something like panic in her eyes. He took her hand, squeezing gently. Your choice. I will support whatever you decide. She took a shaky breath. Tell him to come tomorrow, I will talk to him. Michael Thompson arrived the next morning, riding a dappled gray gelding. He was tall and lean, with the same honey-colored hair as his sister, though his eyes were blue rather than green. He dismounted carefully, his gaze finding Helena where she stood on the porch. Helena, he said, his voice rough. Michael. The silence stretched between them, years of hurt and anger palpable in the air. Finally, Michael took off his hat, turning it in his hands. I came to apologize. I should have helped you when you asked. I should have believed you about Johnny. I was wrong, and I am sorrier than I can say. Helena's jaw was tight, her arms crossed defensively. Why now? Why come now after all this time? Because I heard he was dead and I was relieved. And then I felt ashamed, because I should have protected my little sister, and instead I abandoned her when she needed me most. He took a step closer. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I am sorry, and if there is anything I can do to make it right, I will. Wyatt stayed back, letting Helena handle this on her own terms. He saw the war playing out on her face, the desire to hold onto her anger versus the need for family, for connection. Finally, she said, "Come inside. We will talk." They spent the afternoon around the kitchen table, years of silence being slowly bridged. Michael explained that he had been struggling with his own demons, dealing with his wife's death in childbirth and the loss of his infant daughter. He had been drowning in grief when Helena's letter came, and he had lashed out rather than deal with his own pain. That is no excuse, he said firmly, but it is the truth. I was a coward and you paid the price for it. Helena listened, her expression gradually softening. When he finished, she reached across the table and took his hand. I forgive you. It is not easy and it will take time to rebuild what we had. But you are my brother and I do not want to lose you again. Michael's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I do not deserve it, but thank you. He stayed for supper, and Wyatt found himself liking the man despite everything. There was genuine remorse in Michael and a clear desire to make amends. Before he left, he pulled Wyatt aside. You are the one who killed Johnny, he said. It was not a question. I am. Then I owe you a debt I can never repay. My sister is alive and happy because of you. Michael extended his hand. Thank you for protecting her when I did not. Wyatt shook his hand, feeling the strength of the other man's grip. She did not need protecting. She is the strongest person I know. Maybe so, but everyone needs someone in their corner. Michael glanced back at Helena, who was washing dishes in the kitchen. You love her, more than anything. Good. She deserves that. He paused, then added, marry her, make it official. Give her the security of knowing she is truly yours and you are truly hers. After Michael left, promising to return for Christmas, Helena came to Wyatt and wrapped her arms around his waist. That went better than I expected. I am glad. You deserve to have your family back. She looked up at him, and there was something considering in her expression. He told you to marry me, did not he? He might have mentioned it. And what do you think? Wyatt's heart kicked up a notch. I think I want whatever you want. If you want to get married, I will ride into town right now and get the preacher. If you want to wait, we will wait. If you never want to make it legal, that is fine too. I just want you, Helena, however I can have you. She was quiet for a long moment, and he could see her thinking, weighing. Finally, she said, "Yes, yes, yes, I will marry you. Not because Michael said we should, or because the town expects it, or because I need the security, but because I love you, Wyatt Kincaid, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Joy exploded in his chest, pure and bright. He picked her up and spun her around, her laughter ringing out across the prairie. When he set her down, he kissed her until they were both breathless. "When?" he asked against her lips. "Soon. Before winter. I do not want to wait any more." They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Wilson, with half the town in attendance. Helena wore a dress she had made herself, simple but beautiful, the color of cream with tiny flowers embroidered along the hem. Wyatt wore his best suit, his dark hair slicked back, his eyes never leaving his bride. Sheriff Coleman stood as his best man, and Mrs. Peterson stood with Helena. Michael had returned from his ranch in Missouri, standing in the front pew with tears streaming down his face. Even Doc Harrison was there, looking satisfied, as if he had known all along how this would end. The preacher spoke about love and commitment, about two people becoming one, and Wyatt barely heard a word of it. He was too busy memorizing the way Helena looked in the light streaming through the church windows, the way her hands trembled slightly as she held his, the way her voice was strong and sure when she said, "I do." When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Wyatt kissed her with every ounce of love he felt, and the congregation erupted in applause. The reception was held at the town hall, with food and dancing and more goodwill than Wyatt had expected. Even some of the men who had warned him away from Helena came to offer their congratulations, admitting that they had been wrong about her. Thomas Garrett from the feed store shook Wyatt's hand and said, "I guess she did not break your heart after all." "No," Wyatt agreed, pulling Helena close. "She mended it instead." They spent their wedding night in the ranch house, in the bedroom that was now officially theirs. Wyatt carried Helena over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the middle of the room. "Hello, Mrs. Kincaid," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "Hello, Mr. Kincaid," she replied, her eyes shining. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other in the way that only comes when trust and love are absolute. Helena had been afraid at first, memories of Johnny making her tense. But Wyatt was patient, worshipful, showing her with every touch and kiss that this was different, that she was cherished. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the darkness, and Helena traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. "I never thought I could be this happy," she said softly. "After everything that happened, I thought this part of my life was over. That I would never trust anyone enough to let them close. I am glad you took the chance on me. It was not really a chance. I think I knew, even that first day when I shot you, that you were different, that you were safe." She propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "You gave me my life back, Wyatt. You gave me the courage to be happy again. You did that yourself. I just gave you a place to land." She kissed him, slow and deep, and they made love again with more passion this time, more urgency. And when they finally fell asleep in the early hours of the morning, wrapped around each other, Wyatt thought that he had never been more content in his entire life. Winter came, blanketing the prairie in snow. The ranch work slowed, giving them time to simply be together, to enjoy their new marriage without the constant pressure of labor. They spent long evenings by the fire, talking and reading and making plans for the future. "I want children," Helena said one night, curled up against Wyatt's side. "Not right away, but eventually. I want to fill this house with noise and chaos and love. How many? At least 3, maybe more. I want them to have siblings, to have the family I did not really get to have. Then we will have as many as you want." He kissed the top of her head. "They will be lucky to have you as a mother. And you as a father. Michael visited for Christmas, bringing gifts and staying for a week. He and Helena rebuilt their relationship slowly, finding their way back to the closeness they had shared as children. Wyatt watched them together and felt grateful that she had this, that she was not alone in the world anymore. On Christmas Eve, after Michael had gone to bed, Wyatt and Helena stood on the porch looking out at the snow-covered land. The moon was bright, turning everything silver, and the cold was sharp but not unpleasant. "I have something for you," Wyatt said, pulling a small wrapped package from his pocket. Helena opened it carefully, revealing a delicate gold locket. Inside was a tiny photograph of the two of them, taken by a traveling photographer who had passed through Wilson in November. "It is beautiful," she breathed. He fastened it around her neck, his fingers lingering on her skin. "I wanted you to have something to remind you that you are loved, that you are safe, that this is real." She turned in his arms, tears glistening in her eyes. "I do not need a reminder. I know it every time I look at you, but I love it anyway. Thank you." They kissed under the moonlight, and Wyatt thought about all the warnings he had received, about all the people who had told him Helena would break his heart. They had been wrong. She had not broken him. She had completed him. Spring brought new life to the ranch. The cattle had survived the winter well, and Wyatt was able to buy more, expanding their herd. Helena's garden flourished under her care, providing vegetables not just for them but for sale in town. They were building something sustainable, something that would last. And then, in April, Helena gave him news that changed everything. "I am pregnant," she said one morning at breakfast, her voice a mixture of joy and nervousness. "Doc Harrison confirmed it yesterday when I went into town." Wyatt felt like his heart might burst. "A baby." "We are going to have a baby." "Yes, in late October, near as Doc can figure." He was around the table in a heartbeat, pulling her up and into his arms. "This is the best news I have ever received, the best," she laughed, holding him tight. "I was afraid you might think it is too soon." "Too soon." "Helena, this is perfect. Everything about this is perfect." They told Michael the next time he visited, and he responded with equal enthusiasm, already planning to be present for the birth if he could manage it. Mrs. Peterson heard the news and immediately began knitting baby clothes. Sheriff Coleman bought them a cradle he had made himself, sheepish about the gesture but clearly pleased. The town, which had once gossiped about their scandalous relationship, now embraced them fully. They were Wyatt and Helena Kincaid, the ranchers who had overcome adversity to build a good life together. They were proof that second chances existed, that redemption was possible. Helena bloomed with the pregnancy, her face taking on a glow that made her even more beautiful. Wyatt was protective to the point of being overbearing, constantly worrying about her doing too much work, but she handled his fussing with good humor and occasional exasperation. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she reminded him when he tried to forbid her from feeding the chickens. "Women have been doing this for thousands of years. I think I can manage. I just want you to be careful. I am careful, but I also need to live my life." She took his hand and placed it on her belly where the baby was just beginning to show. "Feel that? That is our child, growing strong because I am taking care of myself. Trust me, Wyatt, I know what I am doing." He did trust her. More than that, he marveled at her strength, her resilience, her capacity for joy after everything she had been through. She had not let her past define her. Instead, she had chosen to embrace her future, to build something beautiful from the ashes of her old life. The baby came early, on a cold October night when the first frost was painting the grass silver. Helena's labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Wyatt thought he might lose his mind from worry. Doc Harrison stayed with them, calm and professional, guiding Helena through each contraction. "You are doing great," Doc kept saying. "Just a bit more. You can do this." and she did. At dawn, as the sun was breaking over the horizon, their son came into the world with a lusty cry that filled the house. Doc Harrison placed the baby in Helena's arms, and Wyatt watched his wife fall instantly, completely in love. "He is perfect," she breathed, touching the baby's tiny fingers, his downy dark hair. "Wyatt, he is absolutely perfect." Wyatt could not speak. His throat was too tight with emotion. He reached out to touch his son's cheek, marveling at the softness, the realness. This was his child. His and Helena's. A whole new person born from their love. "What should we name him?" Helena asked, looking up at him with tired but radiant eyes. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had never quite settled on one. Now, looking at his son, Wyatt knew. "James, after my father." "James Kincaid." Helena smiled. "I love it. Hello, James. Welcome to the world." Doc Harrison left after ensuring both mother and baby were healthy, and Wyatt climbed carefully into bed beside Helena, the three of them fitting together in a way that felt utterly right. James was asleep, tiny and warm between them, and Helena's head rested on Wyatt's shoulder. "We did it," she said softly. "We made a family. We did. And it is just the beginning." Michael arrived 2 days later, riding hard from Missouri, and was immediately enchanted by his nephew. He held James with surprising confidence, cooing at the baby in a way that made Helena laugh. "You are a natural," she teased. "I had a daughter, remember? Even if only for a few hours, I knew how to hold her." His expression clouded briefly, but then James grabbed his finger and the sadness passed. "This little one is lucky to have you two as parents." "We are the lucky ones," Wyatt said, watching his wife and son with his brother-in-law. "This," he thought, "this is everything." The years that followed were full and rich. James grew into a sturdy toddler, curious about everything, fearless in the way of small children. When he was 2, Helena became pregnant again, and this time gave birth to twin girls, much to everyone's surprise. "Twins," Wyatt said, holding his daughters for the first time, one in each arm. "We have twins." Helena, exhausted but glowing, laughed from the bed. Surprise. They named the girls Mary and Grace, and if Wyatt thought his heart had been full before, it now threatened to overflow entirely. The ranch house rang with children's laughter, with crying and playing and the chaos that came with young life. They expanded the house, adding rooms, creating space for their growing family. Helena proved to be an exceptional mother, patient and loving but also firm when needed. She taught the children to read, to work, to be kind. Wyatt taught them to ride, to care for the animals, to respect the land that sustained them. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they stood together on the porch at sunset, watching James chase the twins around the yard. The boy was 6 now, the girls 4, and they were everything Wyatt had never known he wanted. "Do you remember what Sheriff Coleman said?" Helena asked, leaning into Wyatt's side. "About me breaking your heart." "I remember. He was wrong." "He was." Wyatt pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "You did not break my heart, Helena. You healed it. You made it bigger. You filled it with so much love I sometimes think I cannot contain it all." She turned to face him, her green eyes bright. "They all warned you, did not they? All those men in town, they said I would ruin you. They did." "And what did you say?" He smiled, remembering that moment of clarity, of certainty. "I said then she can have every piece, and I meant it. If loving you meant risking everything, I was willing to do it. I would do it again, 1,000 times over." "You are still a fool," she said, but her voice was tender. "Your fool." "My fool," she agreed, and kissed him as the sun set behind them and their children played in the yard, and the life they had built together stretched out in all directions, solid and real and impossibly beautiful. More years passed. bringing new challenges and joys in equal measure. The ranch thrived, becoming one of the most successful in the region. Wyatt's cattle were known for their quality, and Helena's vegetables won prizes at the county fair 3 years running. They hired help as needed, treating their workers fairly and building a reputation as good employers. James grew into a serious young man, responsible and hardworking, clearly destined to take over the ranch someday. Mary was fierce and independent, with her mother's strength and her father's stubbornness. Grace was quieter, thoughtful, with a love of books and learning that reminded Wyatt of Helena. When James was 10, Helena gave birth to another son, Samuel, and 2 years later, a daughter they named Rose. 5 children filled their home, and Wyatt thought often about Helena's wish, expressed all those years ago to fill the house with noise and chaos and love. She had gotten her wish, and then some. Michael remained a steady presence in their lives, visiting several times a year, becoming the favorite uncle who spoiled the children and told them outrageous stories. He never remarried, claiming that he had had his great love and would not try to replace it, but he seemed content with his life, with his role as uncle and brother. On their 10th anniversary, Wyatt took Helena back to the creek where they had first kissed, where he had first told her he loved her. The children were with Michael for the day, giving them rare time alone. They sat by the water, their feet dangling in the current just as they had a decade earlier. Helena's hair had hints of silver now, and there were lines around her eyes, but to Wyatt, she was more beautiful than ever. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Marrying me, staying here, building this life?" She looked at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "Regret it? Wyatt, this life we have built is the greatest gift I have ever received. You gave me back myself. You showed me I could be loved, that I deserved to be loved. You gave me children and a home and a future I never thought I would have. The only thing I regret is that I did not meet you sooner." "I am glad I killed Johnny Bledsoe," Wyatt said, surprising himself with the bluntness. Helena did not flinch. "So am I. If you had not, I would still be trapped, or I would have done it myself and possibly been hanged for it. You freed me, Wyatt, in every way that matters. You freed yourself. You were already planning to leave him. Maybe. But you gave me the opportunity to do it without blood on my own hands. That matters more than you know." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Helena said, "I heard Thomas Garrett died last week." "I heard that too. He was a good man, even if he was wrong about you." "He was not the only one. They all warned you, remember? Everyone in town told you I would break your heart, that I would destroy you. I remember. And you told them I could have every piece of it. I did." He took her hand, threading their fingers together. "And I would say it again, right now, even knowing everything we would go through. Even knowing about the hard times, the struggles, the moments when we thought we might lose the ranch or lose each other. It was all worth it, Helena. Every single second." She leaned her head on his shoulder and he felt her smile against his shirt. "They were wrong about me. I did not break your heart. No, you made it whole." They stayed by the creek until the sun began to set, and then they went home to their children, to the life they had built together from nothing but love and stubbornness, and a refusal to accept what everyone else said was impossible. The years continued their march. James married at 21, bringing a sweet-natured woman named Catherine into the family. They built a house on the far side of the ranch and began their own family. Mary shocked everyone by announcing she wanted to be a doctor and left for medical school in Kansas City, determined and undeterred by the obstacles she would face as a woman in that field. Grace became a teacher in Wilson, beloved by her students. Samuel followed his father and older brother into ranching, proving to be a natural with horses. Rose, the youngest, showed artistic talent and spent hours sketching the prairie landscape. Wyatt and Helena aged gracefully, their love deepening with each passing year. They were the town's success story, the couple that everyone pointed to as proof that true love existed, that second chances were possible, that redemption could be found even in the aftermath of tragedy. On their 20th anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. There were 15 people around the dinner table now. Wyatt and Helena, their 5 children, James's wife Catherine and their 2 babies, Michael, who had made the trip from Missouri, and a few close friends. The table groaned under the weight of food, and the house rang with laughter and conversation. After dinner, when the children had run outside to play and the adults were lingering over coffee, Sheriff Coleman stood and raised his glass. He was old now, close to retirement, but still sharp as ever. "I want to make a toast," he said, waiting for everyone's attention. 20 years ago, a stubborn cowboy fell in love with a woman who had every reason not to trust men. Half the town, including me, told him he was making a mistake. We said she would break his heart, that he would regret it. He paused, looking directly at Wyatt. We were wrong. Dead wrong. Wyatt and Helena Kincaid have built something beautiful together, something that has enriched not just their own lives but all of ours. They have shown us what love looks like when it is real and committed and brave. So here is to 20 more years and 20 after that. Everyone drank, and Helena wiped tears from her eyes. Wyatt stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her as their family and friends cheered. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "More than words can say. I love you too. Always." That night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Wyatt and Helena sat on the porch in the rocking chairs they had acquired over the years. The prairie stretched out before them, silver in the moonlight, peaceful and eternal. "You think this is what happy ever after looks like?" Helena asked. "I do. It is not perfect. We have had our struggles, our hard times, but we have faced them together and we have come out stronger for it. That is all anyone can ask for." "I used to think I did not deserve happiness," Helena said softly. "After Johnny, after everything that happened, I thought I was too broken, too damaged. But you showed me I was wrong. You loved me when I could not love myself, and you gave me the space to heal. You did the healing. I just held your hand while you did." She smiled, that beautiful smile that still made his heart skip a beat. "Always so humble, but I know the truth, Wyatt Kincaid. You saved me. We saved each other." They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, watching the stars wheel overhead. The life they had built together was solid and real, a testament to the power of love and forgiveness and second chances. They had 5 children, a thriving ranch, a community that respected them and each other. What more could anyone ask for? The answer, of course, was nothing. They had everything that mattered. 25 years after their wedding, Wyatt woke early on a spring morning to find Helena already up, standing at the window looking out at the sunrise. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, and she leaned back into him with a contented sigh. "Good morning, Mrs. Kincaid. Good morning, Mr. Kincaid." It was the same greeting they had exchanged every morning for a quarter century, and it never got old. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything. Nothing. How lucky we are." She turned in his arms to face him. "Do you remember the day we met, when I shot you? How could I forget? I still have the scar." She traced her finger over his shoulder where the bullet had entered all those years ago. "I was so angry that day, so lost. I thought my life was over, that I would never be anything but Johnny Bledsoe's widow, trapped by his memory even after his death. And now I am Helena Kincaid, wife and mother and rancher. I am loved and respected and happy. I am everything I never thought I could be." She looked up at him, her green eyes still as bright as the day he first saw her. "You did that, Wyatt. You gave me a second chance at life. You did the same for me. Before I met you, I was just drifting, trying to build a ranch but not really building a life. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to be more than I was." They kissed, slow and sweet, the kiss of two people who had loved each other through countless trials and tribulations and had come out the other side stronger for it. Later that day, all 5 of their children came to visit with their families. James and Catherine had 4 children now, all healthy and happy. Mary had finished medical school and opened a practice in Kansas City, where she was becoming known as an excellent physician. Grace had married another teacher and had twins. Samuel was engaged to a rancher's daughter from the next county over. Rose, at 17, was preparing to go to art school in Chicago. They gathered around the extended table for Sunday dinner, 3 generations of Kincaids and their loved ones, and the noise was tremendous. Children ran everywhere. Adults talked and laughed, and the house was full of life. Wyatt looked around the table and felt a profound sense of satisfaction. This was what he had wanted all those years ago when he first bought this land and started building. Not just a house or a ranch, but a home. A family. A legacy. After dinner, when the children were playing outside and the adults were cleaning up, Michael pulled Wyatt aside. He was in his 60s now, silver-haired but still strong, and there was something in his expression that suggested importance. "I want to thank you," Michael said simply, "for everything you have done for my sister, for giving her the life she deserved, for loving her the way she should have been loved from the beginning. It was my privilege. When I first came here after Johnny died, I thought I had lost her forever. I thought the damage was too great, that too much time had passed. But you gave her back to me. You gave her back to herself. I will never forget that." Wyatt clasped the other man's shoulder. "She was always strong enough to find her way back. I just made sure she had a safe place to land." "You are a good man, Wyatt Kincaid. One of the best I have ever known." They stood together on the porch, watching the grandchildren play, and Wyatt felt the weight of all the years behind them, all the choices that had led to this moment. He thought about the warnings he had received, about Sheriff Coleman and Thomas Garrett and all the others who had told him Helena would break his heart. They could not have been more wrong. She had not broken his heart. She had expanded it, filled it, made it capable of more love than he had ever imagined possible. She had given him children and grandchildren, a life rich with meaning and purpose. She had stood beside him through every challenge, every joy, every mundane day that made up a life well lived. And he had done the same for her, loving her through her nightmares and her fears, showing her day after day that she was worthy of love, that she was safe, that she would never be trapped or hurt again. Together, they had built something beautiful from the ashes of her old life and the emptiness of his. They had created a family, a home, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. That night, after everyone had left and the house was quiet again, Wyatt and Helena lay in bed together, tangled up the way they had been for 25 years. Helena's head rested on his chest, and his hand stroked through her silver-streaked hair. "You ever wish things had been different?" she asked suddenly. "That we had met under better circumstances, that I had not been married to Johnny, that I had not shot you?" "No." His answer was immediate and certain, because if things had been different, we might not have appreciated what we have. We might have taken it for granted. Every hard moment, every struggle, it all led us here. I would not change a single thing. Not even the bullet wound," he laughed, feeling the rumble of it in his chest. "Okay, maybe that, but everything else, no. It was all worth it to have you, Helena. It was all worth it to have this life with you." She propped herself up to look at him, and even in the darkness, he could see the love shining in her eyes. They said I would break your heart. They did. And you said, I said, then she can have every piece. He cupped her face in his hands, bringing her down for a kiss. And I meant it. You could have shattered me into a million pieces, Helena, and it would have been worth it for even a moment of your love. But instead, you made me whole. You made me better than I ever thought I could be. We made each other better. Yes, we did. They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, bodies that knew each other intimately, hearts that beat in sync. And when they fell asleep afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, it was with the deep contentment of two people who had found their home in each other. The years continued to pass, bringing the inevitable changes that come with age. Wyatt's dark hair turned silver, matching Helena's. His body grew stiffer, the old injuries from his ranger days making themselves known. Helena developed a persistent cough one winter that scared them both, but Doc Harrison's successor was able to treat it with rest and medicine. They slowed down, as people do, letting their children take over more of the ranch work. James ran the operation now, proving to be as capable as his father. Samuel worked beside his brother, and even Mary, when she visited from the city, would pitch in with a will. Wyatt and Helena spent more time on the porch, watching their grandchildren play, telling stories of the old days. The ranch had been passed down, but it still bore the Kincaid name, and it would continue to do so for generations. On their 40th anniversary, there was another huge gathering, even bigger than before. Wyatt was 70 now, Helena 68, and they were surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The young ones could not quite believe that their grandparents had such a romantic story, that they had overcome so much to be together. "Tell us again," one of the great-grandchildren begged, "about how Grandma shot Grandpa and he married her anyway." Helena laughed, the sound still as bright as it had been when she was young. "I shot your grandfather because he killed a bad man who had been hurting me. I was angry and scared, and I was not thinking clearly. And I loved her anyway," Wyatt added, pulling Helena close. "Because I could see who she really was, underneath all that fear and anger. I could see her strength, her courage, her beautiful heart." "But everyone said she would break your heart," another child said, repeating the family legend. "What did you say?" Wyatt looked at his wife, at the woman who had been his partner for 4 decades, who had given him 5 children and a lifetime of love. "I said, then she can have every piece, because loving her was worth any risk, and I was right. She did not break my heart, she made it bigger." Helena's eyes filled with tears, and she kissed him softly. "I love you, Wyatt Kincaid. I have loved you for 40 years, and I will love you for 40 more if we are blessed with that much time. I love you too, Helena, always." They stood together, surrounded by their family, by the life they had built from nothing but love and determination, and a refusal to accept what everyone else said was impossible. They had proven that second chances existed, that love could heal even the deepest wounds, that 2 broken people could come together and make each other whole. The sun set over the Kansas prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and Wyatt held his wife close, grateful for every moment they had been given, grateful for the life they had built, grateful most of all for the day a beautiful woman with green eyes had shot him, and he had fallen in love with her anyway. It was, he thought, the best decision he had ever made. They lived 15 more years, growing old together with grace and humor and deep, abiding love. When Helena finally passed away at 83, peacefully in her sleep with Wyatt holding her hand, he thought his heart might actually break. But then he remembered their life together, all the joy and love they had shared, and he realized she had kept her promise. She had not broken his heart. She had filled it so full of love that it overflowed, even in grief. He lived another 2 years without her, surrounded by their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling stories of the woman he had loved, keeping her memory alive. And when his time finally came, when he closed his eyes for the last time at 88 years old, his last thought was of Helena, of the way she had looked that first day with smoke curling from her pistol and defiance in her eyes. They buried him beside her on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, under a cottonwood tree they had planted on their 10th anniversary. Their children erected a simple headstone that read, Wyatt and Helena Kincaid, 2 hearts, 1 love forever. And the ranch continued, generation after generation, a testament to what 2 people could build when they chose love over fear, hope over despair, together over alone. The story of how they met, how he was warned she would break his heart and he said she could have every piece of it, became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as a reminder that true love existed, that it was worth fighting for, that it could overcome anything. Because in the end, that was their legacy. Not just the land or the ranch or the family name, but the love that had started it all. The love that had transformed 2 broken people into something beautiful. The love that had proved everyone wrong and built something that would last forever. They warned him she would break his heart. The cowboy said, then she can have every piece. And in giving her every piece, he found himself whole.